أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين خاتم النبيين بالقاسم محمد وأهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Welcome to your daily Ramadan program. Inshallah, we'll recite the 8th juz of the Holy Quran. Before we start the Quran recitation, I'd like to sponsor tonight's sponsors, Mr. Nadeem Salim from United Wealth Group. Please recite a Surah Fatiha for his marhumin as well as your own marhumin. Surah Fatiha. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Also, just a reminder, inshallah, this coming Saturday, April 24th at 10 p.m., we will have our Holy Quran Kahoot family trivia game. You do need to register for this, and inshallah, you can take part in this Kahoot program, and there are some nice prizes for that as well. That'll be this coming Saturday. Also, on Friday, we will be commemorating the wafat of Bibi Khadija Salamullahi alayha. This program, of course, will be both in person and online. So program will start at the same time, 6:30, and inshallah conclude with Maghrib and Salat. So do join us for this program on Friday, April 23rd. Inshallah, we'll get started with the recitation of the 8th juz of Holy Quran. I would request Ali Hassan, you want to recite?
Sure. It starts from which ayat?
It starts from ayat number 111, Walau Annana, the
Okay.
beginning of 8th juz.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ولو أننا نزلنا إليهم الملائكة وكلمهم الموت وحشرنا عليهم كل شيء قبلا ما كانوا ليؤمنوا إلا أن يشاء الله ولكن أكثرهم يجهلون وكذلك جعلنا لكل نبي عدوا شياطين الإنس والجن يوحي بعضهم إلى بعض زخرف القول غرورا ولو شاء ربك وما فعلوه فذرهم وما يفترون ولتصغى إليه أفئدة الذين لا يؤمنون بالآخرة وليرضوه وليقترفوا ما هم مقترفون أفغير الله أبتغي حكما وهو الذي أنزل إليكم الكتاب مفصلا والذين آتيناهم الكتاب يعلمون أنه منزل من ربك بالحق فلا تكونن من الممترين وتمت كلمة ربك صدقا وعدلا لا مبدل لكلماته وهو السميع العليم وإن تطع أكثر من في الأرض يضلوك عن سبيل الله إن يتبعون إلا الظن وإن هم إلا يخرصون إن ربك هو أعلم من يضل عن سبيله وهو أعلم بالمهتدين فكلوا مما ذكر اسم الله عليه إن كنتم بآياته مؤمنين وما لكم ألا تأكلوا مما ذكر اسم الله عليه وقد فصل لكم ما حرم عليكم إلا ما اضطررتم إليه
إن
وإن كثيرا لا يضلون بأهوائهم بغير علم إن ربك هو أعلم بالمعتدين وذروا ظاهر الإثم وباطن إن الذين يكسبون الإثم سيجزون بما كانوا يقترفون صدق الله العلي العظيم.
finish the juz right here. One more ayat.
Okay. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ولا تأكلوا مما لم يذكر اسم الله عليه وإنه لفسق وإن الشياطين ليوحون إلى أوليائهم ليجادلوكم وإن أطعتموهم إنكم لمشركون.
صدق الله. بسم الله مصطفى.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم أومن كان ميتا فأحييناه وجعلنا له نورا يمشي به في الناس كمن مثله في الظلمات ليس بخارج منها كذلك زين للكافرين ما كانوا يعملون وكذلك جعلنا في كل قرية أكابر مجرميها ليمكروا فيها وما يمكرون إلا بأنفسهم وما يشعرون وإذا جاءتهم آية قالوا لن نؤمن حتى نؤتى مثل ما أوتي رسول الله أعلم حيث يجعل رسالاته سيصيب الذين أجرموا صغار عند الله وعذاب شديد بما كانوا يمكرون فمن يرد الله أن يهديه يشرح صدره للإسلام ومن يرد أن يضله يجعل صدره ضيقا حرجا فكأنما يصعد في السماء كذلك يجعل الله الرجس على الذين لا يؤمنون وهذا صراط ربك مستقيما قد فصلنا الآيات لقوم يذكرون لهم دار السلام عند ربهم وهو وليهم بما كانوا يعملون ويوم يحشرهم جميعا يا معشر الجن قد استكثرتم من الإنس وقال أولياؤهم من الإنس ربنا استمتع بعضنا ببعض وبلغنا أجلنا الذي أجلت لنا أجلت لنا قال النار مثواكم خالدين فيها إلا ما شاء الله إن ربك حكيم عليم وكذلك نولي بعض الظالمين بعضا بما كانوا يكسبون صدق الله العلي. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا معشر الجن والإنس ألم يأتكم رسل منكم يقصون عليكم آياتي وينذرونكم لقاء يومكم هذا قالوا شهدنا على أنفسنا وغرتهم الحياة الدنيا وشهدوا على أنفسهم أنهم كانوا كافرين ذلك أن لم يكن ربك مهلك القرى بظلم وأهلها غافلون ولكل درجات مما عملوا وما ربك بغافل عما يعملون وربك الغني ذو الرحمة إن يشاء يذهبكم ويستخلف من بعدكم ما يشاء كما أنشأكم من ذرية أو من آخرين إنما توعدون لآت وما أنتم بمعجزين قل يا قوم اعملوا على مكانتكم إني عامل فسوف تعلمون من تكون له عاقبة الدار إنه لا يفلح الظالمون وجعلوا لله مما زرع من الحرث والأنعام نصيبا فقالوا هذا لله بزعمهم وهذا لشركائنا فما كان لشركائهم فلا يصل إلى الله وما كان لله فهو يصل إلى شركائهم ساء ما يحكمون وكذلك زين للكثير من المشركين قتل أولادهم شركاؤهم ليردوهم وليبلسوا عليهم دينهم ولو شاء الله ما فعلوه فذرهم وما يفترون وقالوا هذه أنعام وحرث حجر لا يطمعهما إلا من نشاء بزعمهم وأنعام حرمت ظهورها وأنعام لا يذكرون اسم الله عليها افتراء عليه سيجزيهم بما كانوا يفترون وقالوا ما في بطون هذه الأنعام خالصة لذكورنا ومحرم على أزواجنا وإن يكن ميتة فهم فيها شركاء سيجزيهم وصفوهم إنه حكيم عليم قد خسر الذين قتلوا أولادهم سفها بغير علم وحرموا ما رزقهم الله افتراء على الله قد ضلوا وما كانوا مهتدين صدق الله العلي العظيم.
جزاكم الله. مهدي भाई बिस्मिल्लाह.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. وهو الذي أنشأ جنات معروشات وغير معروشات ونخل والزرع مختلفا أكله والزيتون والرمان متشابها وغير متشابه كلوا من ثمره إذا أثمر وآتوا حقه يوم حصاده وآتوا حقه يوم حصاده ولا تسرفوا إنه لا يحب المسرفين. ومن الأنعام حمولة وفرشا كلوا مما رزقكم الله ولا تتبعوا خطوات الشيطان إنه لكم عدو مبين. ثمانية أزواج من الضأن اثنين ومن المعز اثنين قل الذكرين حرم أم الأنثيين أما اشتملت عليه أرحام الأنثيين نبئوني بعلم إن كنتم صادقين. ومن الإبل اثنين ومن البقر اثنين قل الذكرين حرم أم الأنثيين أما اشتملت عليه أرحام الأنثيين أم كنتم شهداء إذ وصاكم الله بهذا فمن أظلم ممن افترى على الله كذبا ليضل الناس بغير علم إن الله لا يهدي القوم الظالمين. قل لا أجد فيما أوحي إلي محرما على طائم يطعمه إلا أن يكون ميتة أو دما مصفوحا أو لحم خنزير فإنه رجس أو فسقا أهل لغير الله به فمن اضطر غير باغ ولا عاد فإن ربك غفور رحيم. وعلى الذين هادوا حرمنا كل ذي ظفر ومن البقر والغنم حرمنا عليهم شحومهما إلا ما حملت ظهورهما أو الحوايا أو ما اختلط بعظم ذلك جزيناهم ببغيهم وإنا لصادقون. وإن كذبوك فقل ربكم ذو رحمة واسعة ولا يرد بأسه عن القوم المجرمين. سيقول الذين أشركوا لو شاء الله ما أشركنا ولا آباؤنا ولا حرمنا من شيء كذلك كذب الذين من قبلهم حتى ذاقوا بأسنا قل هل عندكم من علم فتخرجوه لنا إن تتبعون إلا الظن وإن أنتم إلا تخرصون. قل فلله الحجة البالغة فلو شاء لهداكم أجمعين. قل هلم شهداءكم الذين يشهدون أن الله حرم هذا فإن شهدوا فلا تشهد معهم ولا تتبع أهواء الذين كذبوا بآياتنا والذين لا يؤمنون بالآخرة وهم بربهم يعدلون. صدق الله العلي العظيم.
بسم الله شباب.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وهذا كتاب أنزلناه مبارك فاتبعوه واتقوا لعلكم ترحمون أن تقولوا
यहाँ से शुरू करना कुल ताला सिर्फ
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل تعالوا أتل ما حرم ربكم عليكم ألا تشركوا به شيئا وبالوالدين إحسانا ولا تقتلوا أولادكم من إملاق نحن نرزقكم وإياهم ولا تقربوا الفواحش ما ظهر منها وما بطن ولا تقتلوا ولا تقتلوا النفس التي حرم الله إلا بالحق ذلكم وصاكم به لعلكم تعقلون ولا تقربوا مال اليتيم إلا بالتي هي أحسن حتى يبلغ أشده وأوفوا الكيل والميزان بالقسط لا نكلف نفسا إلا وسعها وإذا قلتم فأعدلوا ولو كان ذا قربى وبعهد الله أوفوا ذلكم وصاكم به لعلكم تذكرون وأن هذا صراطي مستقيما فاتبعوه ولا تتبعوا السبل فتفرق بكم عن سبيله ذلكم وصاكم به لعلكم تتقون ثم آتينا موسى الكتاب تماما على الذي أحسن وتفصيلا لكل شيء وهدى ورحمة لعلهم بلقاء ربهم يؤمنون وهذا كتاب أنزلناه مبارك فاتبعوه واتقوا لعلكم ترحمون أن تقولوا إنما أنزل الكتاب على طائفتين من قبلنا وإن كنا عن دراساتهم لغافلين وتقولوا لو أنا أنزل علينا الكتاب لكنا أهدى منهم فقد جاءكم بينات من ربكم وهدى ورحمة فمن أظلم ممن كذب بآيات الله وصدف عنها سنجزي الذين يصدفون عن آياتنا سوء العذاب بما كانوا يصدفون هل ينظرون إلا أن تأتيهم الملائكة أو يأتي ربك أو يأتي بعض آيات ربك يوم يأتي بعض آيات ربك لا ينفع نفسا إيمانها لم تكن آمنت من قبل أو كسبت في إيمانها خيرا قل انتظروا إنا منتظرون إن الذين فرقوا دينهم وكانوا شيعا لست منهم في شيء إنما أمرهم إلى الله ثم ينبئهم بما كانوا يفعلون من جاء بالحسنات فله أشر أمثالها ومن جاء بالسيئات فلا يجزى إلا مثلها وهم لا يظلمون قل إنني هداني ربي إلى صراط مستقيم دينا قياما ملة إبراهيم حنيفا وما كان من المشركين قل إن صلاتي ونسكي ومحياي ومماتي لله رب العالمين لا شريك له وبذلك أمرت وأنا أول المسلمين قل غير الله أبغي ربا وهو رب كل شيء ولا تكسب كل نفس إلا عليها ولا تزر وازرة وزر أخرى ثم إلى ربكم مرجعكم فينبئكم بما كنتم فيه تختلفون وهو الذي جعلكم خلائف الأرض ورفع بعضكم فوق بعض درجات ليبلوكم فيما آتاكم إن ربك سريع العقاب وإنه لغفور رحيم صدق الله العلي العظيم.
أحسنتم جزاكم الله. بسم الله. هذا رأي.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ألف لام ميم كتاب أنزل إليك فلا يكن في صدرك حرج منه لتنذر به وذكرى للمؤمنين اتبعوا ما أنزل إليكم من ربكم ولا تتبعوا من دونه أولياء قليلا ما تذكرون وكم من قرية أهلكناها فجاءها بأسنا بياتا أو هم قائلون فما كان دعواهم إذ جاءهم بأسنا إلا أن قالوا إنا كنا ظالمين فلنسألن الذين أرسل إليهم ولنسألن المرسلين فلنقصن عليهم بعلم وما كنا غائبين والوزن يومئذ الحق فمن ثقلت موازينه فأولئك هم المفلحون ومن خفت موازينه فأولئك الذين خسروا أنفسهم بما كانوا بآياتنا يظلمون ولقد مكناكم في الأرض وجعلنا لكم فيها معايش قليلا ما تشكرون ولقد خلقناكم ثم صورناكم ثم قلنا للملائكة اسجدوا لآدم فسجدوا إلا إبليس لم يكن من الساجدين قال ما منعك ألا تسجد إذ أمرتك قال أنا خير منه خلقتني من نار وخلقته من طين قال فاهبط منها فما يكون لك أن تتكبر فيها فاخرج إنك من الصاغرين قال أنظرني إلى يوم يبعثون قال إنك من المنظرين قال فبما أغويتني لأقعدن لهم صراطك المستقيم ثم لآتينهم من بين أيديهم ومن خلفهم وعن أيمانهم وعن شمائلهم ولا تجد أكثرهم شاكرين قال اخرج منها مذءوما ومدحورا لمن تبعك منهم لأملأن جهنم منكم أجمعين ويا آدم اسكن أنت وزوجك الجنة فكلا من حيث شئتما ولا تقربا هذه الشجرة فتكونا من الظالمين فوسوس لهما الشيطان ليبدي لهما ما وري عنهما من سوآتهما وقال ما نهاكما ربكما عن هذه الشجرة إلا أن تكونا ملكين أو تكونا من الخالدين وقاسمهما إني لكما لمن الناصحين فدلاهما بغرور فلما ذاقا الشجرة بدت لهما سوآتهما وطفقا يخصفان عليهما من ورق الجنة وناداهما ربهما ألم أنهكما عن تلكما الشجرة وأقل لكما إن الشيطان لكما عدو مبين قالا ربنا ظلمنا أنفسنا وإن لم تغفر لنا وترحمنا لنكونن من الخاسرين قال اهبطوا بعضكم لبعض عدو ولكم في الأرض مستقر ومتاع إلى حين قال فيها تحيون وفيها تموتون ومنها تخرجون صدق الله العلي العظيم.
أحسنتم جزاكم الله. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا بني آدم قد أنزلنا عليكم لباسا يواري سوآتكم وريشا ولباس التقوى ذلك خير ذلك من آيات الله لعلهم يذكرون يا بني آدم لا يفتننكم الشيطان كما أخرج أبويكم من الجنة ينزع عنهما لباسهما ليريهما سوآتهما إنه يراكم هو وقبيله من حيث لا ترونهم إنا جعلنا الشياطين أولياء للذين لا يؤمنون وإذا فعلوا فاحشة قالوا وجدنا عليها آباءنا والله أمرنا بها قل إن الله لا يأمر بالفحشاء أتقولون على الله ما لا تعلمون قل أمر ربي بالقسط وأقيموا وجوهكم عند كل مسجد وادعوه مخلصين له الدين كما بداكم تعودون فريقا هدى وفريقا حق عليهم الضلالة إنهم اتخذوا الشياطين أولياء من دون الله ويحسبون أنهم مهتدون يا بني آدم خذوا زينتكم عند كل مسجد وكلوا واشربوا ولا تسرفوا إنه لا يحب المسرفين صدق الله العلي العظيم اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. Asantum Jazakumullah, all those people who took part in the recitation, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept it from all of you, give you reward for every ayat that you recited. Before Dua Iftitah, I will go over the summary of this juz number 8 that we recited. In this 8th juz of Quran, there are two parts, of course. First part is the remainder of Surah An'am, which we finished, and the beginning of Surah Araf, for which we recited a few ayat. In the remainder of Surah An'am, 4 main discussions take place. Number 1 is comforting Rasulullah. Number 2, 4 foolish acts of the polytheist. Ponder over these foolish acts and see, do we sometimes end up committing similar foolish acts when it comes to our deen? Third, 2 bounties of Allah. And lastly, the 10 commands of Allah. Comforting of Holy Prophet is that Prophet is told that these stubborn people would not have brought faith even if angels were sent from heavens or the dead spoke from the grave. So Prophet, while you are trying to convince them and they're still not paying heed, don't worry about it. Don't feel saddened by it. Even if the angels were sent down and if this dead were to speak so that they would believe in it, they would not have understood. The miracle of Quran is enough to bring people to faith. And whoever wants to believe, that's fine. وَمَا عَلَيْنَا إِلَّا الْبَلَاغُ, right? All you have to do is explain. And all you have to do is tell them, give them the message, and you don't have to convince them, or you don't have to, make them by force believe in you. Second is the 4 foolish acts of the polytheists. Number 1, they split shares of crops between Allah and their partners, preserving the partner's share from Allah, but not preserving Allah's share. Now, this is when it comes to, things that they would grow out of ground. they would split the shares. What they do with it comes up. From the fear of poverty and shame, they would kill their daughters. Not just this surah, but Surah Anam, but also you hear that in Surah Takwir. بِأَيِّ ذَنْبٍ قُتِلَتْ. Actually, there's a question being raised. What is the purpose? What is the crime for which they were buried alive? That was their second foolish act. Third, they would split, or they had split rather, their cattle and crops into three parts, reserved for who they please, those no one can ride upon. So there was a part of the animals and the cattle, no one was allowed to ride upon them. They would be left as is. Second, those slaughtered in the name of other than Allah. And then forbidding their offspring of their cattle from women unless it was stillborn. Then they would both husband and the wife can eat from it. Otherwise, only husband can eat from it and the wife would be deprived of eating from it. So these were some of their foolish acts, if you want to call it. Sometimes we hear the similar stories in our culture as well, that men can eat this, women cannot eat this, women can eat this, men cannot eat this. Now, of course, they're not making it haram, how these people used to make it haram and forbidding the offspring of their cattle from women unless it was stillborn. And if it wasn't, then she would be allowed to eat from it. So this was haram in their culture. But we hear in our culture as well, sometimes certain things, we impose upon ourselves, making it to be, oh, you can't eat from this. Men can eat from this, women cannot eat from this, and vice versa. So these are something which are, of course, brought about ourselves, do not have any basis in Sharia. You want to show respect, that's fine. But to impose this, making it to be something which is a part of Sharia, that is something where we need to draw a line. Third discussion is two bounties of Allah, crops and cattle. The surah's name is An'am. Allah has raised the status of some, and what they have been blessed with more than others is a test for them. So the way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has leveled or given more blessings to some and less to others. Lastly, 10 commands of Allah. Make no partners with Allah. Number 2, be good to your parents. 3, do not kill your offspring. Stay away from sin. Kill no one unjustly. Don't usurp the property of orphans. Be fair in your weighing and measuring. Be just in your speech. Fulfill your covenant with Allah. And lastly, stay on straight path. Taken from the verses 151 and 152. So if you refer to these two verses of the surah An'am, you will find these 10 commands. 4 additional points are important to keep in mind as well. Number 1, as sins are apparent, so are they hidden. Verse 120 talks about this. Faith is equal to life and disbelief is equal to death. So the comparison is being done regarding life and death, faith and disbelief. The path of Al-Bayt is the path of Allah. Verse 153 highlights that point. Those who split in 2 sects and separate, having no connection to the Holy Prophet. This is verse number 159, addresses that issue. Second portion of this juz contains the ayat of Surah Araf. I won't go into all of those because we didn't recite the entire surah or entire part of it. Number 1 is the bounties of Allah are mentioned. The Holy Quran, in the beginning part of this Surah Araf, warning the people, advising people of faith, following the Quran instead of others, commanding obedience to Allah in the earth. All actions are based on following these actions. Even the examples of the prophets and imams return to these principles. Second is the creation of mankind. That is something which is a continuous discussion that we read in Surah Baqarah, even in Surah Al-Imran, and partially in Surah Nisa. And again, the creation of insan is mentioned here. giving man authority over the earth, that you are the reason for which this earth is created. Earth is not the reason for which you are created. Don't take it vice versa. Utilize this earth. It's for your possession and for your usage. Utilize it. Mandating prostration of the angels to Prophet Adam. So the story of Hazrat Adam continues. But the difference this time around is how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when he's speaking, highlights the dual pronoun. So in Arabic, you have singular, you have dual, and you have plural. In other languages, usually we have the singular and we have plural. In Arabic, you have dual as well. Dual refers to when two people are doing this, of course. So in all of these verses regarding the story of Hazrat Adam and Hazrat Hawa, doing what they did and being taken away from the heaven, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is using the dual pronoun, not blaming one or the other for the act, or blaming only one person, as the biblical account does. So that's not the case over here. Number 4 is, 4 calls raised only in this chapter of the Quran has Allah called out, "O children of Adam," 4 times. "O children of Adam, Ya Bani Adam." And the last one was, "Khudhu zinatakum inda kulli masjid." O children of Adam, seek your embellishment in prayers. In the last 3 calls, Allah mentions clothing to disprove the practice of the polytheist to perform circumambulation of the Kaaba without any clothes, as they had claimed. In the 4th call, Allah commands mankind to obey the Holy Prophet. I will stop over here as we did not get to the remaining discussion and we did not read those ayat. But of course, there's quite a bit of more discussion in this juz pertaining to Surah Araf. Inshallah, if there's time, I will discuss them and share with you later on. This concludes the Quran recitation program, and inshallah at this point, I will request Brother Rahil Nathani to go ahead and start us off with the recitation of Dua Iftitah. Bismillah.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم إني أفتتح الثناء بحمدك وأنت مسدد للصواب بمنك، وأيقنت أنك أنت أرحم الراحمين في موضع العفو والرحمة، وأشد المعاقبين في موضع النكال والنكمة، وأعظم المتجبرين في موضع الكبرياء والعظمة. اللهم أذنت لي في دعائك ومسألتك، فاسمع يا سميع مدحتي، واجب يا رحيم دعوتي، وأقل يا غفور وثرتي. فكم يا إلهي من كربة قد فرجتها، وهموم قد كشفتها، وأثرة قد عقلتها، ورحمة قد نشرتها، وهلقة بلاء قد فككتها. الحمد لله الذي لم يتخذ صاحبة ولا ولدا، ولم يكن له شريك في الملك، ولم يكن له ولي من الذل، وكبره تكبيرا. الله أكبر، الله أكبر، الله أكبر. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. الحمد لله بجميع محامده كلها، على جميع نعمه كلها. الحمد لله الذي لا مضاد له في ملكه ولا منازع له في أمره. الحمد لله الذي لا شريك له في خلقه ولا شبيه له في عظمته. الحمد لله الفاشي في الخلق أمره وحمده، الظاهر بالكرم مجده، الباسط بالجود يداه الذي لا تنقص خزائنه ولا تزيده كثرة العطاء إلا جودا وكرما إنه هو العزيز الوهاب. اللهم إني أسألك قليلا من كثير مع حاجة بي إليه عديما وغناك عنه قديم وهو عندي كثير وهو عليك سهل يسير. اللهم إن عفوك عن ذنبي وتجاوزك عن خطيئتي وسفهك عن ظلمي وسترك على قبيح عملي وهلمك عن كثير جرمي عندما كان من خطئي وعمدي أطمعني في أن أسألك ما لا أستوجبه من الذي رزقتني من رحمتك وأريتني من قدرتك وعرفتني من إجابتك فصرت أدعوك آمنا وأسألك مستأنسا لا خائفا ولا وجلا مدلا عليك فيما قصدت فيه إليك فإن أبتع عني أتبت بجهلي عليك ولعل الذي أبتع عني هو خير لي لعلمك بعاقبة الأمور فلم أر مولا كريما أصبر على عبد اللئيم منك علي. يا ربي إنك تدعوني فأولي عنك وتتهبب إلي فأتبغض إليك وتتودد إلي فلا أقبل منك كأن لي التطول عليك فلم يمنعك ذلك من الرحمة لي والإحسان إلي والتفضل علي بجودك وكرمك فارحم عبدك الجاهل وجد عليه بفضل إحسانك إنك جواد كريم. الحمد لله مالك الملك مجري الفلك مسخر الرياح فالك الإسباح ديان الدين رب العالمين. الحمد لله على حلمه بعد علمه والحمد لله على عفوه بعد قدرته والحمد لله على طول أناته في غضبه وهو قادر على ما يريد. الحمد لله خالق الخلق باسط الرزق فالق الإسباح ذي الجلال والإكرام والفضل والإنعام الذي بعد فلا يرى وقرب فشهد النجوى تبارك وتعالى. الحمد لله الذي ليس له منازع يعادله ولا شبيه يشاكله ولا زهير يعاذده قهر بعزته العزة وتواضع لعظمته العظمى فبلغ بقدرته ما يشاء. الحمد لله الذي يجيبني حين أنادي ويستر علي كل عورة وأنا عاسي ويعظم النعمة علي فلا أجازي فكم من موهبة هنية قد أعتاني وعزيمة مخوفة قد كفاني وبهجة مونقة قد أراني فأثني عليه حامدا واذكره مسبحا. الحمد لله الذي لا يهتك حجابه ولا يغلق بابه ولا يرد سائله ولا يخيب آمله. الحمد لله الذي يؤمن الخائفين وينجي الصالحين ويرفع المستضعفين ويضع المستكبرين ويهلك ملوكا ويستخلف آخرين. والحمد لله قاسم الجبارين مبير الظالمين مدرك الهاربين نكال الظالمين صريخ المستصرخين موضع حاجات الطالبين معتمد المؤمنين. الحمد لله الذي من خشيته ترعد السماء وسكانها وترجف الأرض وأمارها وتموج البحار ومن يسبح في غمراتها. الحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله. الحمد لله الذي يخلق ولم يخلق ويرزق ولا يرزق ويطعم ولا يطعم ويميت الأحياء ويحيي الموتى وهو حي لا يموت بيده الخير وهو على كل شيء قدير. اللهم صل على محمد عبدك ورسولك وأمينك وسفيك وحبيبك وخيرتك من خلقك وحافظ سرك ومبلغ رسالاتك، أفضل وأحسن وأجمل وأكمل وأزكى وأنمى وأطيب وأطهر وأسنى وأكثر ما صليت وباركت وترحمت وتهننت وسلمت على أحد من عبادك وأنبيائك ورسلك وصفوتك وأهل الكرامة عليك من خلقك. اللهم وصل على علي أمير المؤمنين ووصي رسول رب العالمين عبدك ووليك وأخي رسولك وهجتك على خلقك وآيتك الكبرى والنبأ العظيم. وصل على الصديقة الطاهرة فاطمة سيدتي نساء العالمين. وصل على سبطي الرحمة وإمام الهدى الحسن والحسين سيدي شباب أهل الجنة. وصل على أئمة المسلمين علي بن الحسين ومحمد بن علي وجعفر بن محمد وموسى بن جعفر وعلي بن موسى ومحمد بن علي وعلي بن محمد والحسن بن علي والخلف الهادي المهدي. حججك على عبادك وأمنائك في بلادك صلاة كثيرة دائمة. اللهم وصل على ولي أمرك القائم المؤمل والعدل المنتظر وهفه بملائكتك المكرمين وأيده بروح القدس يا رب العالمين. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم اجعله الداعي إلى كتابك والقائم بدينك. استخلفه في الأرض كما استخلفت الذين من قبله. مكن له دينه الذي ارتضيته له. أبدله من بعد خوفه أمنا يعبدك لا يشرك بك شيئا. اللهم أعزه وأعزز به وانصره وانتصر به وانصره نصرا عزيزا وافتح له فتحا يسيرا واجعل له من لدنك سلطانا نسيرا. اللهم أظهر به دينك وسنة نبيك حتى لا يستخفي بشيء من الحق مخافة أحد من الخلق. اللهم إنا نرغب إليك في دولة كريمة تعز بها الإسلام وأهله وتذل بها النفاق وأهله وتجعلنا فيها من الدعاة إلى طاعتك والقادة إلى سبيلك وترزقنا بها كرامة الدنيا والآخرة. اللهم ما عرفتنا من الحق فهملنا وما قصرنا عنه فبلغنا. اللهم المم به شعثنا وشعب به صدعنا والتق به فتقنا وكثر به قلتنا وعزز به ذلتنا واغن به عائلنا واقض به عن مغرمنا واجبر به فقرنا وسد به خلتنا ويسر به عسرنا وبيض به وجوهنا وفك به أسرنا وانجه به طلبتنا وانجز به مواعيدنا واستجب به دعوتنا وآتنا به سؤلنا وبلغنا به من الدنيا والآخرة آمالنا وآتنا به فوق رغبتنا يا خير المسؤولين وأوسع المعتين. اشف به صدورنا واذهب به غيظ قلوبنا واهدنا به لما اختلف فيه من الحق بإذنك إنك تهدي من تشاء إلى صراط مستقيم. وانصرنا به على عدوك وعدونا إله الحق آمين. اللهم إنا نشكو إليك فقد نبينا صلواتك عليه وآله وغيبة ولينا وكثرة عدونا وقلة عددنا وشدة الفتن بنا وتظاهر الزمان علينا. فصل على محمد وآل محمد وعنا على ذلك بفتح منك تعجل وبذر تكشف ونصر تعز وسلطان حق تظهر ورحمة منك تجللناها وعافية منك تلبسناها برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. سورة الفاتحة.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. صلى الله محمد. Ahsantum, jazakumullah. Thank you very much for that beautiful recitation. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept. Before I begin, just quickly, let me just run over the slides of the announcements. Inshallah, tomorrow till Sunday programs will be online and in person, starting 6:30 with group recitation of Quran, followed by dua Iftitah and the speech, and program will end with Maghriban. Tonight's sponsor is brother Mr. Nadeem Salim of United Wealth Group. Let us remember his marhumin as well as your own marhumin. Surah Fatiha. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Maliki yawmiddin. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. Ihdinas siratal mustaqim. Siratal ladzina an'amta alayhim. Ghayril maghdubi alayhim waladdallin. Once again, inshallah, this coming Saturday, we will have the trivia, the Kahoot program. Inshallah, take part in this. You need to register in order to take part in it. And Friday, we have Majlis commemorating the Wafat of Bibi Khadija Salamullah Alaiha. Program, inshallah, will start at 6:30. And Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday are the nights for the recitation of Dua Mujir. Inshallah, this program will be separate from the main program. Main program starts at 6:30 and concludes with Maghriban. This, inshallah, will just be the Dua program, which will start at 9:30. Of course, this will be online only. Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday nights, we will be reciting Dua Kumail. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين خاتم النبيين أبي القاسم محمد وأهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. أما بعد فقد قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله في دعائه اللهم ارزقني فيه رحمة الأيتام وإطعام الطعام وإفشاء السلام وصحبة الكرام بطولك يا ملجأ الآملين. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. As you know, we've been discussing the daily du'as of the month of Ramadan, which are associated with Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam. Tonight, we recited this dua number 8, in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or rather the Holy Prophet teaches us asking these dua from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by saying, "O Allah, on this day, let me have mercy on the orphans and feed the hungry and spread peace and keep company with the noble-minded, O the shelter of the faithful." Sadaqa Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. When we look at the this particular dua and that which is mentioned in it, we can deduce that we can divide rather this dua into 4 main parts. The first part of the dua talks about being kind and merciful toward the orphans. When it comes to being kind and merciful toward the orphans and having the guardianship over them, we find that Quran has left enough instructions that even if we did not refer towards the traditions of Rasulullah and Ma'sumin alayhi wassalam, we would have understood the emphasis and the importance of this phenomena. Taking care of the orphans, providing for them, whether or not it's your duty that you are the guardians of them or not. For example, in Surah Baqarah, verse number 83, it says, وَإِذَا أَخَذْنَا مِيثَاقَ بَنِي إِسْرَائِيلَ لَا تَعْبُدُونَ إِلَّا اللَّهَ وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا وَذِي الْقُرْبَى وَالْيَتَامَى وَالْمَسَاكِينَ. That we took the covenant from the children of Bani Israel that do not worship anyone except Allah, and to parents do good deeds, and to the relatives, to the orphans, and to the needy. So this mention of the needy over here, and many such ayat that you find in Quran where the discussion relates to dhil qurba, right after that you find yatama, right after that you find masakin, and in some ayat wabn sabil, and so on and so forth. So this is something which is a common occurrence in Quran. On many occasions we read the similar pattern of these ayat. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he said, inna fil jannati daran yuqalu laha darul faraj la yadkhuluha illa man farraha yatam al-mu'minin. Said, indeed, in the paradise there's a house. Dar refers to a house, a bayt, or a fort, if you want to call it a mansion. That this house in Jannat, nobody will enter it, and this house is called Darul Faraj. Faraj means the house of happiness. There's no sadness over there, and in this house nobody enters it illa man farraha yatam al-mu'minin, except those who have made the orphans of mu'minin and the believers, showed them mercy and made them joyful. They brought joy and smile on the faces of those yatama, those orphans of mu'minin. So this house in Jannat is dedicated for such individual. And it's not just the fact that taking care of the orphans. A lot of time, many of us go out of our way to go provide for them. There are so many projects that are working around the globe, taking care of the most oppressed and the most needy people around the world. During the month of Ramadan, if you look into it, you'll find that so many organizations are collecting zakat and collecting sadaqat, collecting fidya, kafarat, and at the end of Ramadan, they will be collecting the fitrah to take care of those who are in need, and especially if yatim are also part of it. We're all doing our part from that aspect. But is that enough? A person came to Rasulullah and he complained to Rasulullah. He said, Shakar ila nabi qasawata qalbih. He said, oh Rasulullah, I'm very stern-hearted. That means what? I'm not soft-hearted. And a person can tell that about themselves, and even others can tell that about other people, that if so-and-so is very soft as far as their heart is concerned, or very stiff. So this person, he acknowledged the fact that I'm very stern or stiff-hearted. What do I do? فقال, Prophet said, إذا أردت أن يلين قلبك فأطعم المسكين وامسح رأس اليتيم. If you want to make your heart soft أن يلين قلبك, or you want your heart to become soft. فأطعم المسكين. Lean, comes from the word lean itself, or layyin, as is used in Quran as well, means soft. In fact, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordered Hazrat Musa alayhi salatu wasalam to go speak to Fir'aun, he said, speak to him qawlan layyana, in a soft tone. Although Fir'aun is your biggest enemy, but even when you're speaking to your biggest enemy, speak in a soft tone. Probably the reason was, at that time, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted, maybe there's a possibility that Fir'aun might listen. As it is mentioned that the Pharaoh, when they were running after Hazrat Musa and his followers, and they passed through the sea, everybody drowned, except of course Hazrat Musa and his companions. And at that moment, Fir'aun even had the change of heart. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knew that. So he said to Hazrat Musa, when you go speak to him, wow, qawlan layyana, softly. So Rasulullah said, if you want your heart to become soft, فَأَطْعِمِ الْمِسْكِينَ, provide food to the miskin, the destitute, وَامْسَحْ رَاسَ الْيَتِيمِ, and wipe over the head of yatim. That does not mean don't provide for the yatim. Yes, feed the yatim and the orphans as well, but wipe your hand over their head. This is taking care of a yatim, an orphan. As I was alluding to, the fact that many of us take part in making donations to those institutions who are taking care of the yatim. But how many of us have sat down, spoken to, felt the need, the real need of a yatim is lack of a fatherly figure in their life to provide comfort to them, caress their hair, show passion, compassion to them, mercy to them. That's what is being referred to, that if you want your heart to become layyin, or lean, or become soft, this is what you should do. Because in Surah Nisa it says, Inna alladhina ya'kuluna amwal al-yatama dhulman innama ya'kuluna fi butunihim nara sayaslawna sa'ira. That indeed those who devour the property of orphans unjustly are only consuming into their bellies fire, and they will be burned in a blaze. So that's the opposite of it. The one who usurps the property, the one who should have given it to them. It was their right. You were entrusted by it, and you failed to take care of it. This is what you're doing in reality. Amir al-Mu'mineen, Imam al-Muttaqeen Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salatu wassalam, he said, Man kafa yatiman fi nafaqatin bimalihi hatta yastaghniya wajabat lahu al-jannatu al-batta. He said, O Ali, well, Rasulullah said to Ali ibn Abi Talib, O Ali, whoever spends enough from his or her wealth in order to make an orphan self-sufficient, hatta yastaghniya, that this orphan becomes self-sufficient. A lot of times it's not providing just wealth, because it's possible that they may use it and spend it, and then they'll be in need of again. But doing something for them that makes them self-sufficient, that they're no longer in need to ask for help, will definitely enter paradise. Wajabat lahul jannah. See how Jannat and attaining Jannat is made so easy in our religion. And then Prophet continued, Ya Ali, man masaha yadahu ala rasi yatimin tarahuman lahu atahu Allahu azza wa jal bi kulli sha'ratin nuran yawm al-qiyamah. Anyone who wipes and rubs his hand over the head of yatim, tarahuman lahu, with mercy, showing compassion to them, Allah will grant this person, for every hair that he passes through or touches under his hand. How many hair did you touch? Nuran yawm al-qiyamah. For each hair, you will be granted a nur on the day of judgment. And of course, if we have even one of the nur on the day of judgment, it will be enough for our shafa'at, let alone being provided with anwar that we touch in the amount of the hair that we have touched by providing for a yatim. So although feeding and providing for an orphan is a very important issue, and according to the first hadith that we recite, guarantees paradise. But being the followers of Amir al-Mu'mineen Imam al-Muttaqeen, who said, I do not perform ibadat in order to reach paradise. Rather, I do it because I find, or nor do I perform an ibadat because I feel afraid of, Jahannam. I do it because I found Allah to be worthy of this ibadat. So when you look at this concept as ibadat as well, and being the follower of Amir al-Mu'mineen Imam al-Muttaqeen, you do it because this is the necessity, this is the need. I do ibadat of Allah, Imam said, shukran lahu, so that I could be thankful to him. That's what the second hadith focuses. Along with feeding and providing, more important is showing love and compassion to the orphan, sitting with them, relieving them of the deprivation that they have felt of not having a fatherly figure around them. How many of us have sat down and done such a thing? Read a story to them. When you do that, according to the second hadith, you are bestowed with the nur on the day of judgment. The act of caressing and affability toward them is needed in order to keep their self-esteem from getting damaged, of course. It is already damaged, no further damaging it. Raising them as sound individuals in society, so that orphans, they must not feel pity for themselves or feel humiliation in the society after losing their father or mother. I think that's what the reason why, in order to, Rasulullah felt all the pains of his life that anyone would have felt. But one pain had to be in the form of him being raised as a yatim, not having a fatherly figure around. So in order for him to understand, fathom, and comprehend what yatim goes through, Rasulullah was raised one. Although Hazrat Abu Talib did not spare anything as far as taking care of Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alaihi wasallam, providing the need and the care that he needed from a fatherly figure. Who does it come from? Comes from the uncle, who's the closest to his father, because both Hazrat Abdullah and Hazrat Abu Talib were born from the same mother. They were both sons of Hazrat Abdul Muttalib, but the difference between these two brothers and the other brothers were that they were born from the same mother. Having that closeness, Hazrat Abu Talib did not let Rasulullah feel the loss of a fatherly figure, that he's being raised as a yatim. But nonetheless, on the paper, that's how it is addressed. Prophet said, إِذَا بَكَى الْيَتِيمُ احْتَزَّ لَهُ الْعَرْشِ. There are a few things that shake the throne of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the arsh of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When an orphan cries, the throne of Allah is shaken up. Allah says to his angels, "O angels, who has made this child cry, whose father is no longer alive?" Angels reply, "O Allah, you are more aware than us." Then Allah says, "Whoever consoles this child and pleases him, I will please that person in Qiyamah." So when you hear the cries of an orphan around the world, and you do an effort, make an effort to console this child, Allah says, "I am pleased with that person in Qiyamah." Whenever an orphan cries, his tears fall in the hands of Allah, the one who is Rahman. So all of these are incentives for us, as Rasulullah is reciting in this dua, rightly so, making it to be the first and the foremost point, that, "Oh Allah, Allahumma rzuqni fihi rahmat al-aytam," that give me ability to show mercy towards the aytam. I read somewhere as well that if you show mercy to the aytam and the orphans of others, people will show mercy toward your aytam. That means that, of course, every person has to die and leave this world. And when you leave this world, and when your children become are void of father, people will show mercy to them the way you showed mercy to the orphans of others. That's why Amir al-Mu'mineen, when he gave that will of his after he was struck by the sword of Ibn Muljim Lanatullah alayhi, Imam started giving these wasaya. And these wasaya advices, Imam began each one of the sentences with the word Allah, Allah, by God, by God. Until Imam reached this point, he said, Allah, Allah fil aitam. La yadi'u bihadratik. By God, take care of the orphans. Do not let them be hungry at times and fill at times. That means what? Take care of them constantly throughout. Don't just provide for them one meal and then forget about the next meal. Their right shouldn't be wasted in your presence. He said, La yadhi'u bihadratik. Their right should not be wasted in your presence. Today, in a spread out world that Muslims live in, we shouldn't be content with helping orphans locally in our area. Instead, we should combine our efforts so that the orphans of the world are under the umbrella of a devised economical and educational program from which all of them can benefit. That's the first portion of the dua. The second portion of the dua talks about feeding the hungry. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he says, "Wa it'amat ta'am." That Allah, on this day, give me the ability that I provide it, the ta'am to not just particularly those who are destitute and hungry. No, it's anyone. You know, in the month of Ramadan, you provide iftari to your family, to your relatives, to your friends. You invite people over to break a fast with you. It's a big ibadat. Of course, going through this pandemic for the last couple of years, this has not really been happening, but we understand what's at stake. So we keep that in perspective, but nonetheless, we all emphasize a great deal. In fact, sometimes we go overboard when it comes to providing ta'am in the month of Ramadan. So much food is wasted. So that should also be taken under consideration. Feeding the hungry. Allah loves the act of feeding the people in general, let alone, of course, feeding those who are deserving. Says, referring to Ahlul Bayt in Surah Dahr, وَيُطْعِمُونَ الطَّعَامَ عَلَى حُبِّهِ مِسْكِينًا وَيَتِيمًا وَأَسِيرًا إِنَّمَا نُطْعِمُكُمْ لِوَجْهِ اللَّهِ لَا نُرِيدُ مِنْكُمْ جَزَاءً وَلَا شَكُورًا. And they give food in spite of love for it that they have, right? They also need food. They are the ones, they also need to eat this food. In spite of love for it, they give it to the needy, to the orphan, and to the captive, saying we feed only for the, for the sake of Allah, for the countenance of Allah. Wajhillah, la nuridu minkum. We wish not from you any reward or any gratitude. Interesting that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala calls himself to be the one who provides. Huwa yut'imu wa la yut'am. But then makes an exception for Ahlul Bayt by saying in Quran, yut'imuna at-ta'ama ala hubbihi. There are certain people who are also possessors of this great attribute that they provide for the people, provide food for them, even when they are themselves in need. Of course, this law doesn't apply. You must take care of yourself, must take care of your family first before you go out and help others. That's how the law is, that you should be able to provide for yourself first, because that's your first wajib, and your family, that's your first wajib before you go out and help others around you. But if you can help yourself, and as well as others, that would be great. So Allah despises the act of not helping the needy. وَلَمْ نَكُ مِنَ الْمُصَلِّينَ وَلَمْ نَكُ نُطْعِمُ الْمِسْكِينَ. When it was asked, مَا سَلَكَكُمْ فِي سَقَرَ, what happened that you ended up in the hell? It says, we did not used to feed the poor. In Surah Fajr also, the discussion of this comes about. In Surah Ma'un, surah that we recite on a regular basis, it begins, in the beginning, it says, فَذَلِكَ الَّذِي يَدْعُ الْيَتِيمَ وَلَا يَحُضُّ عَلَىٰ طَعَامِ الْمِسْكِينِ. That for the one who drives away the orphan and does not encourage the feeding of the poor. So not only that you should be doing it yourself, but you should also be encouraging others too. In an Islamic society, this is sort of like a wajib. Prophet said, وَالَّذِي نَفْسُ مُحَمَّدْ بِيَدِهِ لَا يُؤْمِنُ بِي عَبْدٌ يَبِيتُ شَبْعَانْ وَأَخُوهُ أَقَالَ جَارُهُ الْمُسْلِمْ جَاعِلٍ. He said, by life, or the nafs of Muhammad in whose hand by God, that person has not brought iman onto me. La yu'minu bi. Yabitu shab'an, who sleeps while he's filled and his stomach is full. Wa akhuhu, his brother, or jaruhu, his neighbor, ja'i'un, is hungry. Now in some riwayat, the condition of a Muslim neighbor is come. In some riwayat, it's mutlaq, absolute, without any condition. Nonetheless, taking care of your neighbors. That's the second portion of this dua. Third is making the greeting of salam general. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, Ifsha as-salam, Allahumma arzuqni fihi ifsha as-salam. Allah, give me ability on this day to do what? Make these salam, greetings of salam, general. Because salam in Islam is highly recommended. And then the jawab of salam is, of course, becomes wajib. Surah Yunus says, Da'awahum fiha subhanaka Allahumma wa tahiyyatuhum fiha salam. Their call therein will be, exalted are you, O Allah, and their greeting therein will be peace. So Islam emphasizes a great deal when it comes to salam, sending salutations. Imam Sadiq says, As-salamu tahiyyatun li millatina wa amanun li zimmatina. It is a gift for our Muslim nation, and it's an immunity for the dhimmi, li zimmatina. Dhimmi, non-Muslims who are under the protection of Muslim law. A covenant of protection was made with conquered peoples of the book. So those who are Ahl Kitab. Adult male dhimmis were required to pay a tax on their income and sometimes on their land. Restrictions and regulations in dress, in occupation, and residence were often applied. In return, Islam offered dhimmis security of life, security of their property, defense against enemies, communal self-government, and freedom of religious practice. They can practice their religion all they want to. So Imam Sallallahu said what? He said in this riwayat that the salam has tahiyyatun li millatina, is a gift for our people, wa amanun li zimmatina, and has peace and security for those who are in our zimma. That means these whom we provide shelter to or provide security to. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, "Idha talaqaytum fatalaqaw bit-taslimi wat-tasafuh, wa idha tafarraqtum fatafarraqu bil-istighfar." The etiquettes of coming and going. When you meet one another, greet with salam and shaking hands. Of course, avoid shaking hands during this pandemic. Unless, of course, this is within your family, then there's nothing wrong with it. So when you meet one another, greet with salam and shaking of the hands. And when you leave one another, leave by doing istighfar for them, asking for forgiveness for them. When we say Khuda Hafiz, or when we say Allah Hafiz, or however we say Fi Amanillah. So you make this dua, Fi Amanillah, may you be in the aman of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or wassalam, or have salamti and peace be upon you. Make dua for them. When you're leaving, do istighfar from Allah, forgive this person. Why? Because inna min mujibat al-maghfirah badru salam wa husnul kalam. And inna abkhal an-nasi man bakhilas bis-salam. He said amongst the elements of forgiveness are salam. So when you say salam, and this provides forgiveness. Just imagine how easy Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made things for you. I recite this all the time. Man sabaqat rahmatuhu ghadaba. Whose rahmat exceeds his ghadab. So amongst the elements of forgiveness is salam and good speech, of course. The stingiest of the people are those who are stingy with salam. And you know whom I'm talking about. Many times people will wait for others to say salam to them. Well, riwayat mentions that Rasulullah would take lead in sending salam or say salam even to those who were younger to him. He said, in fact, خَمْسٌ لَا أَدْعُوهُنَّ حَتَّى الْمَمَاتِ. وَالتَّسْلِيمُ عَلَى السِّبْيَانِ لِتَكُونَ سُنَّةً مِّن بَعْدِي. He said, I won't leave 5 things until my death. Among them is saying salam to the children. So that becomes a sunnat after me. It's a sunnat of Rasulullah to say salam to the children. Yes, of course, you should teach them, the kids that is, to say salam to the elders. We do that all the time. Someone comes, you're talking on the phone, you tell your children, oh, say salam to your, for example, grandfather, your grandmother, your uncle, your aunt, whoever we're speaking to. But Rasulullah says, don't think that this is something, a loss of honor for you if you go ahead and say salam to someone who's younger than you. It keeps arrogance away from creeping into us. Prophet said, Al-Badi bis salam bari'un min al-kibr. The one who begins with salam, the one who starts, initiates it, remains away from takabbur. Also, the reward of the one who sends salam first is more than the one who answers. In fact, just compare by Amirul Mu'mineen, he said, As-salamu sab'una hasana, tis'atu wa sittuna lil mubtadi wa wahidatun lil rad. That salam has 70 parts. 69 of them goes to the initiator, the one who started and began the salam, and only 1 is for the responder. So you're missing out a great deal, because salam is before kalam. Rasulullah, that's why he's saying, Afsh salam. Oh Allah, give me ability so that I make it general. Why? Yakthuru khairu baytik. When you spread salam, it increases the khair and the barakat of your house. It is considered to be one of the names min asma'illahi ta'ala. Fafshawhu bainakum. There's some etiquettes. I have about 3 minutes in my possession. I'll try and get every single one of these things as far as possible. Say salam when you enter the houses. This is the straightforward ayat of Quran. When you enter the houses in Surah Nur, ayat number 16, give greetings of peace upon each other. A greeting from Allah, blessed and good. But if you enter a house and there's nobody in there, so you say salam if someone is in there, but if there's nobody in, lam yakun fihi ahadun falyaqul salamu alayna min inda rabbina, then say peace be upon us from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The way you recite in after tashahhud, you recite salam, assalamu alayka ya nabiy rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, assalamu alayna wa ala ibadillahi salihin. So when you enter and there's nobody in the house, say assalamu alayna min inda rabbina, peace be upon us from our Lord. Quran tells us that the reply of salam, how should it be? And when you are greeted with the greeting, greet in return with one that is better, or at least return it in a like manner. So someone if says salamun alaikum, you say alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. That's the better way of saying it. But if someone says salamun alaikum, the least you can do is say wa alaikum assalam. So assalamu tatawwu'un wa raddu faridatun. Beginning it or initiating it is tatawwu. It is voluntary, but responding it becomes wajib. So young should say salam to elders. That is the way etiquettes work. Person walking should say salam to the one who's sitting. A few people should say salam to many. If one is entering and there are many people, he should be the one or she should be the one saying salam. Being in the company of righteous and the virtuous people. This is the last discussion of this dua of Rasulullah, which unfortunately I will not be able to get to. There are some good points in it. Maybe I'll just take 1 more minute of your time. It's always a good idea to be around people with good character. Avoid the company of those who have very low character. Of course, we're not judge of anyone's character, but this is something which is apparent from the display, right? They displayed themselves. Then we can decide whom we should hang out and whom we should avoid the company of. Because Imam said the company of evil people will bring bad habits. Along the same way, when the wind, passes over something which is rotten, which is stinky, it carries that bad smell with it as the wind passes over this garbage and then brings that smell. You say, oh, where's the smell come from? It says bad company with people who have bad habits will carry over their bad traits with you. Just like that hawa, that wind is carrying that smell if it passes over garbage or something. So people ask, Faman nujalis, whom should we sit with? And Hazrat Isa responded by saying that sit with those who are righteous people. I hear the Azan in my ears. I guess it's time for Azan. Let me just stop over here. We take this opportunity to thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for having provided us the blessings of this month of Ramadan so that we can take the full benefit from it. Let's proceed to Azan Maghrib.
Allah.
أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله أشهد أن عليًّا ولي الله أشهد أن عليًّا حجة الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح حي على خير العمل حي على خير العمل الله أكبر الله أكبر لا